conversation number 2. We had this live last night, and we also are streaming it live on Facebook, so just everybody knows you are, if you speak, you are going to be live on Facebook. We ask that when we do get to the portion that you are able to speak, please state your name, so that way our ladies who are recording on our team have their name. And raise your hand, Rosemary will come around with the mic, and then if you need this mic as well, we'll pass it around. And we are sanitizing the mic in between uses, just so you know. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So just our hopes for this morning, not tonight, are to bring you through my church, receive the scenarios, then we'll have some Q&A, and provide feedback, so the strengths, the challenges, questions, comments about the scenarios. And then we'll have a feedback form that my intent is to stuff in next week's bulletin after everyone has had a chance to kind of read through these. If you go online to the website, what you saw in the bulletin was a very short, brief version, just like the top level stuff, because obviously we can only fit so much on a sheet of paper, but there's a more detailed one on the website. And then so we'll have the stuff in the bulletins with the form and have it on. It is on the website as well. And then, like I said, we are taking notes, listening to you, and we will go back to our next meeting on October 28th with all of your feedback, comments, questions, concerns, and share it with the team. And then ultimately, it moves up the chain and reaches the Presbyterial Council and the Cardinal. So our ground rules for engagement are please be respectful, collaboration, and then openness to the Spirit speaking through us. Please turn off and silence all mobile devices. Refrain from taking pictures that's live, so it really doesn't matter so much. We're on Facebook. And then, unless it becomes an issue, we'll limit you to a minute. We haven't had any issues the last couple meetings we had, so just try not to, we know that there's lots of people that want to speak, so just kind of limit, keep it short. And now Father will lead us in the reading of our church prayer.
In the Father, and the Son, and the Spirit. Lord Jesus, you speak to us today as you spoke to holy men and women who have gone before us, in every age and in our own time. You call to us and say, "Bring my church, pour out the gift of your Holy Spirit upon us, and so enable us to hear your glory, to listen to each other attentively, to imagine our future boldly, to discern your direction wisely, to persevere in your holy will courageously, to stay together in charity, to surrender our own plans readily, to embrace the great goods, to hand on gifts to future generations. May we remain in the holy company of the Blessed Virgin Mary, the apostles and all the saints. May their example and presence inspire us with patience, confidence in the work of your age. We ask this of you who live and reign with the Father, in the unity of the Holy Spirit, one God, forever and ever.
Amen.
So why are we here? We are here because we're called. We are called and invited by Jesus to renew our walk with him and to renew his church. We have moved from a time when our faith, Christianity, was central to our culture. All of the presumptions we used to make about how faith was handed down, how children and families were formed, and found strength and refuge in the faith are no longer applicable. So culture was more Christian, more open to faith. It enabled people to live out their faith and recognize religion as an avenue for spiritual life. Where are we today? Culture is more secular, ambivalent to faith. It dissuades people to live out their faith, and it undermines religion as an avenue for spiritual life. When we look within, we see a sharp decline in active faith life within the church. Again, with ambivalence toward religious practice and an active faith life, the fact that Mass in attendance has declined by over 27% over the past 20 years is a statistic that is sobering and sad. It may not be surprising, but again, many of us see this in our families and amongst our friends. Today, approximately 40%, that's 2 out of every 5 children baptized, are not confirmed. The ritual of baptism is seen merely as a family tradition to be completed, or families drift away, and formation in our Christian faith is abandoned at an early age. Perhaps most shocking for those of us within the church, as 3 out of 5 children that are confirmed, 85% stop practicing their faith by the age of 21. They simply drift away. Now, some of those young adults may come back for different reasons at different times, such as once they are married and become parents of their own. However, know that 85% stop practicing as a conscious decision to walk away from the faith of their family and heritage. That should stop all of us in our tracks. It begs the question, what must we do? How did this happen? There are many opinions and studied reasons on why people leave the church, but the statistics that we see here show trends that have been in place for several decades. It is not enough to point to any one thing for the past 15 to 20 years. Fundamentally, it comes down to one word: mission. We have lost focus on our mission as church, and with that, we have lost the joy of the gospel. Mission and joy, purpose and true happiness. This is the fulfillment that our human heart seeks. If people can't find that in their church, they are going to search for that elsewhere. So, Renew My Church is the Archdiocese's response to Jesus' call to renewal during these particular times of today. Renew My Church has 3 mission imperatives. We are called by Jesus Christ, we are called to make disciples, build communities, and inspire witness. The keys to remember: our Renew My Church journey is both spiritual, which means to re-encounter Jesus Christ as disciples in parish communities, and structural, to ensure our parishes have adequate resources for vitality. Throughout the discernment and decision process we are now engaged in, it will be important to remember that the things we see on the slide, and that in this process we will be looking at various sacramental and operational data about our parishes, and when we do at times, we may forget that the structure is key to supporting mission, the spiritual journey of Renew My Church. It will be important that together we remind each other that it is not about structure just for the sake of structure, rather structure to support spiritual renewal. Let's keep that in mind as we are called to our own spiritual renewal right now. So how are the scenarios developed? So the proposed scenarios were developed accounting for data such as demographics, mass attendance, financial and facility conditions. The scenarios reflect input from the Archdiocese staff, vicariate leaders, and local pastors. These scenarios are meant to serve as conversation starters and in no way conclusive. No decisions have been made. When we get to the scenarios, we're going to ask that everyone just wait. We're going to walk through all of them first and explain them, and then we'll go through them one by one to give comments and questions. So what are the scenarios? Scenarios are possibilities regarding new parish and school structures within the grouping that enable spiritual renewal among those communities. It includes the status of the parishes and church buildings, and it might be things that would remain in current parish structure, unite with another parish and all the church buildings remain open, unite with another parish and some church buildings close. In our case, the school isn't an issue. There's only one school in our grouping. Scenarios are guiding principles for evaluating sustainability of a scenario. These foundational principles are in the hands handout that's on the website, and they're high-level data, so just remember, that there is more information online for the rest of the more details. So quantitative, minimum of 800 parishioners on average in attendance at weekly Mass. So when we count to October, those are the numbers we're looking at. Operating revenue, which is just our collections, so Sunday collections, holy days, Christmas, Easter, just collections, of $750,000 to support ministry and operations. The school one doesn't apply to us, and that capital repairs and investment must be affordable and prudent. Qualitative, it must be logistically manageable for the pastors and parish staff, and account for the local needs of the community and avoid geographic deserts. All of the principles, quantitative and qualitative, are taken into account. They oftentimes conflict with each other, which is why trade-offs need to be evaluated to balance the quantitative and qualitative considerations. So just terms to keep in mind, a parish is the people, the community, the organization. The church is the sacred space, the building in which we worship. So when we're talking about parish, it means all the people united, combined, and then the church is just the buildings. So parish scenario 1, it's one parish, 4 churches. All 4 parishes unite to form a new united parish, continuing to use all 4 campuses. St. Mary will serve as the administrative center for the united parish and formally be designated as the parish church. So in all the scenarios, one location, if we have 4, one location has to be like the one in charge where all the records are kept, for everything, the central location. Parish scenario 1B, one parish, 3 churches. All 4 parishes unite to form a new united parish. St. Mary, Mater Christi, and St. Pius X churches will continue to hold regular Sunday Masses. St. Hugh Church would cease regularly scheduled Masses and move toward formal closure. St. Mary will serve as the administration center for the united parish and be formally designated the parish church. Parish scenario 2. One parish, 3 churches. St. Pius X discerns with the Berwin and Cicero group, and then the other 3, St. Hugh, St. Mary, and Mater Christi, unite as one parish, continuing to use all 3 campuses. St. Mary would serve as the administrative center for the united parish and formally be designated the parish church. Scenario 2B, one parish, 2 churches. St. Pius X joins a grouping in the Cicero-Roman grouping. St. Hugh, St. Mary, Mater Christi unite as one parish. St. Mary and Mater Christi churches would both be used for regularly scheduled Masses. St. Hugh Church would cease regularly scheduled Masses and move toward formal closure. St. Mary will serve as the administrative center for the united parish and formally be designated the parish church. Parish scenario 3. 2 parishes, 4 churches. Parish 1 would be St. Mary and Mater Christi, unite as one parish. Both churches continue to hold a regular Mass schedule. St. Mary's is designated the parish church. Parish 2, St. Hugh and St. Pius X unite as one parish. Both churches continue to hold a regular Mass schedule. The 2 united parishes would share one business and facility operations staff. They didn't designate in that scenario which one would be the administrative center. So just take the next minute or so to think about what are your initial reactions. Was there anything unclear? Any information that was missing? And then we'll have a chance for everyone want to share their industry, ask questions, and ask questions in a large group. When we do it, it kind of got a little bit off yesterday. I will try to go through each scenario one by one. That way it's easier for Olivia and Sue, who are taking notes, to know which scenario we're talking about. Otherwise, if we jump back and forth, it's a little hard for them to know exactly which one we're talking about. So we'll start with, and we'll go through each one. I know for us, there's the two new ones are probably the most ones that we're concerned about right now. But it is very important that the Archdiocese get feedback from all of us on all of these scenarios, because ultimately it's our feedback, our comments, our concerns, our questions that are hopefully, going to be drawn together with those of the other parishes and become like the notes, the data for, our writing team to present to this executive commission. I keep calling it, I don't know what their title is, but it's basically like the CEO, the CFO, and Bishop Mans, or the new bishop. We have a new bishop coming in November. I can't remember his name, so we're not sure which one is going to be doing it. But so there's this committee, and then they present to the committee, and then they work with the Presbyteral Council, who makes the recommendation, and then the cardinal either likes it or doesn't like it, and then the decision comes down. So does anybody have questions? I know we do have people on Facebook, so every once in a while we'll ask to take a pause in the room if people have comments or questions on Facebook so that we can get everybody. So if anybody has anything about scenario 1A, that is all four unite to become one, everybody stays open. That's 1A. Any comments, questions, strengths, challenges on that one?
I have a question on that one.
When it come around and bring you the mic.
The question I have, it says for scenario 1A, one parish with one pastor, all four church buildings stay open. Does that mean with the four church buildings staying open, there's only going to be one designated pastor?
So in that scenario, one pastor, correct. Does that mean that's the only priest? Not necessarily.
Okay.
The likelihood is, in that scenario especially, there would be an associate. They did say that. Yeah, ideally they would like an associate and a resident, and if not two, but again, there's a priest shortage. So we would be guaranteed one pastor. The hope is to have, at least an associate, if not a resident. Yes. Let's see. Who's? Oh, I'm sorry. That's Joey Etienne.
Maybe more to the same question. We don't know exactly how many more priests will be assigned to that scenario. You will have for sure one pastor, one priest. The rest, hopefully they'll be covering everything, but right now we also have to look at the shortage of the priests. And last night we had a question, and I reminded that the average age of a priest in Chicago's diocese is 70 years old. 10 years from now I'll be 80. I'll be 10 years older too.
Yeah.
So,
We'll all be 10 years old.
well, yes, but with these demands and the holy practices, it's a little bit different, the dynamic there.
And also where they came at this 800 number, just as so they looked at how many priests there would be, and I think the number was, say, 10 years out. They figured out what based on the average number of deaths per year, the average number of ordinations per year, how many priests, divided that by however many parishioners there's, I don't know where they came up with the numbers. So people divided by priests was 800. That's this magic 800 number. So, any other comments, questions, strengths, challenges for scenario 1A? Please here. 1 second. Oh, 1 second, Marcel, they can't hear you if you're not on the mic.
I believe I don't understand exactly what was the first part that you explained.
The first scenario?
Can you say it again?
What the first scenario was? Can you turn on the mic, Rosemary? It's just a little switch goes up. On the front right, there's a little switch. So scenario 1A is all four church buildings stay open. We unite, become one large parish, right? One, because we would cover from from Stickney Forest View through Lyons, McCook, through Riverside, through North Riverside, so that's one large parish, all being one community, 4 worship sites, 4 church buildings remain open. Does that make sense? Okay.
I'm Annabelle. So how would that affect the mass schedules? Would there be the regular masses at each church?
So the mass schedule is determined by the pastor. Most times pastors come in right and they don't change it too much or not initially, if it works. But in this situation, if there's one pastor, 4 places, that's going to be pretty rough
Yeah.
to have that many masses. It's going to be, the pastor's going to set it dependent on if there's associate assigned or resident assigned, what's the availability of like priests like the Commonis. And I know like St. Mary's, they have some priests that their go-to guys, you know, that they use to celebrate Mass there. I'm sure St. Pius does and Mater Christi does. So based on what's the likelihood of having a number of priests to celebrate Masses, but ultimately every church would have one at least. That's what they're saying, one Sunday Mass, not daily Mass, one Sunday Mass. They might decide, you know, that one church is only going to do daily Mass, or maybe one week it's going to be this one. Who knows what the pastor can decide, but ultimately, he makes the decision based on what he wants, based on what is available to be done. So ultimately, it's the pastor.
Thank you.
Did you have a question? Somebody else have a question? About 1A? Okay, so then 1B is all 4 communities still become one parish. But our church, the St. Hugh Church, we would close this building down. So any questions, comments about that one? We're going to go to Facebook, and then we'll get Carol. Maybe Rosemary can run around.
Okay, I'm on here on Facebook. So the first comment is from Gloria Maldonado, and she said, "Hello, my name is Gloria, and I'm an avid parishioner at St. Hugh Parish and have been for over 10 years. Currently, I'm away at Harvard for college, and I'm faced with the looming issue of the renewal of my church grouping. St. Hugh encompassed my life, and I owe my success spiritually, academically, and socially to St. Hugh. When I first started at St. Hugh, I was a young Catholic Girl Scout. I grew up at St. Hugh from being an avid 9-year-old singing along in the choir, to lecturing, volunteering, teaching religious education, fundraising, and now today, addressing you. St. Hugh has a unique and diverse community of people who have always strived to maintain traditions. As we are reaching 100 years of St. Hugh, I hope to continue to see this. People as Catholics deserve to attend church in their own community and not need to travel elsewhere. My question is, because there is no other churches in this town, where would parishioners go despite those who may just stop going completely?"
They would have the option to worship at any of the other 3 sites open, or at another parish. It's completely up to them where they would like to worship. There isn't, I mean, yes, we could become part of that new parish based on if you live in Lyons or McCook, but obviously we know not everybody in Lyons and McCook worships at St. Hugh all the time. So you would have still the opportunity to worship you and everything. I mean, there's people in here now who don't even live in Lyons or McCook and still come and worship here. So again, you would be able to worship wherever you want. Okay, Carol?
Carol Halper. So my big question is, why suddenly is there this B scenario, and what has led St. Hugh to be on the chopping block, so to speak? From information I remember in the past, St. Pius certainly was in more dire straits than St. Hugh, and so my question is, why St. Hugh and why now?
So initially, in other waves, every parish had a facilities report done where they hire a company who comes out, an objective outside company who comes and inspects the facilities, all the buildings, checks for things that you normally wouldn't look at. They checked out pretty much everything, and they make an estimate of in the next 2 to 7 years, I think is what the end year was, what work needs to be done, or may need to be done. Based on the reports that typically came before they released scenarios, but because of COVID, everything kind of got shuffled out of order. We would have never seen those original just 3. They would have possibly been different from the beginning because they didn't get the facility reports done before they released scenarios. So then when they got the facility reports, ours wasn't so good. It was not by far like the worst. Everybody has, between the four buildings, there's roughly $3 million between the four campuses that needs to be done. I think it's, about $4 million, I'm sorry, $4 million. Ours is $1.2 million. So we have, they're saying in the next, say, 7 years, potentially $1.2 million worth of work that needs to be done. And again, that was when they brought up that prudent. Is it prudent? If we even had that much money just laying around, is it prudent to put it into the buildings? Which we obviously don't have $1.2 million. None of the parishes have the money in the bank to cover what their numbers are. I mean, so obviously, like I said, ours wasn't the worst, but it was right up there with the worst.
Just following up on that, is there ever been talk of selling the gym in certain parts of the, without getting rid of the whole church?
Yes, thank you for the second question. Yes. There is the kind of answer to this problem that came from me and other people, that perhaps when we sold Jim first, and maybe Kitty's Hall, he will be helping. First of all, to disconnect those buildings as liabilities, because we have to heat them and maintain them. And if we just sell it to some other company, they will take care of them, and it's just their property, and we will probably receive the revenue. So we'll have to then only take care mainly of the church, school building, this one.
But is that an option?
They said it is possible, but the final decision is not mine or anybody's here. The final decision, if we can do that, will be the Archdiocese of Chicago.
I mean, the city of Lyons has no real recreation facility. Why wouldn't they consider maybe?
I know. It just, first step, we'll start with the Cardinal. As far as,
But I mean, I just think that for us as citizens of this area, and I'm even a Berwyn resident, but I belong to this parish for my whole life, it is clear that the city could use a facility, and we should be pushing, I think, as...
We are pushing. We are pushing for it.
Your voices added to
Yes.
this, that it's not just the six of us saying, but that's why we need your voices to add to the list, because that Father, the first thing Father said was sell buildings, but again, they're not gonna, that's something that they can have in the background, but they need to make this parish decision first, and then whatever the new parish decision is, then they would make the decision of. So if we, got to 1A, then they could decide to sell, say, one or two of the other buildings, and maybe even another building at another campus, and to bring in the revenue we need to fix all of our buildings.
But there are more scenarios, so, and the selling of the buildings kind of fit to most of them.
Well, I just want to voice my perspective as I think that it would be important to reevaluate, if you were able to sell some of the property, what it would cost to maintain this church, which is a beautiful church, and and reevaluate that. That's my ask as a parishioner.
And we will, again, like we've said it, and we're going to keep saying it. I mean, we kind of keep reiterating a lot of the same points. And now at least we have your guys, the backup of the parish saying the same thing, that it's not just six of us saying it, that it is more than just six of us saying that, we do have these other buildings that could, bring in the revenue we need. Any other one? Okay, I'm just going to let she get there, and then we'll get to you. Okay, Marianne?
I just want to say a few things. My name is Jim Cobb. I moved to Lyons in 1960, so I've been a parishioner here for 60 years. So I have a lot of memories going back here. My seven children graduated from here. My one daughter taught 8th grade here. My son were coaching the basketball teams here for years. So St. Hughes means a lot. My wife was very active in everything. She was on the school board. She got Woman of the Year municipality. She was down at the cathedral, got the Marian Award from Cardinal George. So I just want to say, when the school closed, how everything deteriorated here. It was the focal of the community. We had so much good times and say it was just memories that you can't replace. So I just want to stress the importance of the school and the church was in our older people's lives here. So I just want to thank everybody for all the good times we had at St. Hugh. And those are memories you just can't replace. So on behalf of all the old timers here, we're going to lose a lot if this church closes. And if it closes, I don't know what church I'm going to belong to. I have a lot of ties at St. Cletus. I have about 10 grandchildren graduate from St. Cletus. My wife used to work there as a school secretary. So there's going to be a lot of decisions to make for us older people where we want to worship. So I know everybody's doing a great job here, but everything is just up in the air. So we're just kind of hanging in there, let's put it that way. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mary Ann Norris, and I currently live in Burridge, but I've been in Burridge for 27 years, and prior to that, I lived here in Lyons for 10 years, and prior to that in Berwyn. And I attended my first Mass here with my kids while still living in Berwyn in 1984. And because of this church, my husband and I decided to move from Berwyn and build a house on 44th Court because we really like this church. My kids went to pre-K, Lions Cubs across the street, all the way through 8th grade, and I think they're good members of the community. My husband was on the school board here. I taught CCD for a while, and I was also part of the women's group, and I also belonged to Cardinal George's women's group for 7 years downtown as a referral from Father Moran. And then my kids were in high school, and various things changed, and we had some issues with, there was some bad stuff going on in the neighborhood at the time. My husband wanted to move, so that's why we moved to Burridge. And I can tell you that St. Cletus is a pretty good church, being there for now 27 years compared to here at 10 years plus. I still come back to the ladies group. I'm still a member. And because of that, I'd like to point out why I object to 1B. 1B is an objection I think we should all take a vote for because I don't want this church to close. Instead of looking for quantitative reasons like money, the size of the buildings, what can be sold off, quantitative is not enough. Because if I took quantitative of St. Cletus and compared it to quantitative of St. Hugh's, well, St. Cletus has got many more resources, 10 times more money coming in each week. I compare the donations. However, I can tell you 27 years of St. Cletus has not left me satisfied as a Catholic. I get satisfied here as a Catholic. And that's why I think quantitative is not the same as qualitative. The qualitative points between this parish and other parishes. I also was a member of St. Pius and Signy early on, and also of St. Leonard's in Berwyn. I would like to say there's potential in this parish to grow. We can see we have young people here, and I'm sure there's many more young people here than we see today, but there's potential for new families, new growth, and that's all this church needs is new people. And if we were chosen as a church to stay open, as opposed to the one that's closing, and we got extra influx of people, there could be a resurgence that could just make a difference and gain momentum going on. So my vote is, I say we should vote against 1B if we're voting. And I should say the reason is there's only quantitative considerations were accounted for and not qualitative. And what you get here, qualitative, is heart. St. Hugh has people with passion, people with a vision, and people with the capability to work and make things grow. So I say,
think of more things. There's an online form on the website. Fill it out, send it into the mail, drop it in the collection. We need as much feedback, good and bad, to share with the committee and then it goes up. Because ultimately, in order for the president of council and the cardinal to make a good informed decision, he needs as much information as possible. So that's why we're here is to give that. If it was a vote, you know, maybe we get what we want. I don't know. I mean, who knows, you know, but unfortunately, you know, we don't even, it's not even like we make a recommendation. All we do is provide all of your feedback to the writing team, and then it goes up. Any other about one B?
I have another concern also.
Okay.
I don't need the microphone. I think it's important, I'm thinking, I don't know, I'm not sure. Now, St. Pius, I think they have their rooms being rented. So they might be bringing in some money to the Archdiocese, and that's why this business about St. Pius joining another group to continue discernment, I need that explained too a little bit.
Well, so the money that comes in from rentals, you know that $750,000 number that is the benchmark? Rental income does not count towards that. That's why when I said it was $750, it just includes Sunday collections. So while yes, they do have a renter, we have a renter, okay, that was Shelley, so what are we talking, like 8 years ago, 9 years ago, when West 40 left. So they do have a regular renter that does use their building, so yes, they do have other income. Again, it's not, like in that, if you go on the website, there's a parish data sheet that does also have, like all of our income and yearly, the last income and expenditures for each set of parishes, as well as October counts. So, but I mean,
I know what they're saying, but still they're bringing in money. Somebody's getting
right,
in money.
correct.
And St. Hugh, as you mentioned, we used to have these rooms being rented, and at that time, maybe we wouldn't be the ones that are being closed if we still, I'm not saying, I don't know, but I bet you they're thinking about that money at St. Pius that they're bringing in, even though they say they're not. You know what I mean?
Like I said, they're not, it's the way the Archdiocese is accounting for income.
Another concern that I have of these churches, one has a school. Is that St. Mary?
St. Mary, correct.
Why are we with a group when there's a school? Why are we a group with them when there's a school? St. Mary seems to be lucky because with their school, probably, I'm not sure, but maybe they would never close St. Mary's, would they, if they still have a school?
Well, I think when they were initially, we're talking 4 years ago, when these groupings were created, and then there was some adjustments. I mean, if anybody ever remembers really, really back at the very beginning, Mater Christi was not part of our initial, like I said, the very first step they received. They came in a couple of months later. But I think they tried to make sure that there was a school in there, because even if say scenario 3 is the one that we get, that the cardinal decides, part of our mission is to help feed into that school that our area encompasses, and that would be the St. Mary's School. So that would be part of, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, we do promote as our goes to school. I mean, this year everything was kind of quiet, but in the past years I put it in the bulletin all about Catholic schools weeks and when they have their open houses, because it is part of the mission to support the school. So ultimately, I mean, was St. Mary ever on the chopping block, as you're saying? I don't know. Their school probably helped with that. I believe, I don't have the number right offhand, maybe one of the homemakers behind me can look it up, but I think St. Mary's is pretty close to their 800 benchmark of number of people in the pews by themselves, and they probably come pretty close to even the 750K by themselves. I don't have the data sheets at hand right now, and I look them up, my computer's doing this, so, but they're pretty close on their own. They might not be right there, but they're pretty, if they're not there, they're really close. So, were they ever, obviously, if they're not there, but I mean, obviously, church, something's up, right? That we know that no church is full anymore. I mean, that was the slides at the very beginning. There's something needs to be done. So this is obviously just a piece of it. And that's why, yesterday the question came up about, okay, we're closing buildings, but we're not really fixing the ultimate problem. problem, right? Mission, what are we doing about mission? But they're saying, well, yeah, that this part needs to be fixed so that we have money to do mission. Because right now, every dollar we have is really going into paying just what we need to pay. Paying the bills, paying salaries. There is not a whole lot of extra money for mission. I mean, I can tell you that with the just that budget, it's bare bones. And that's like one of our biggest pieces of mission. But we don't have extra to dump into that. You know, if we had that, for 2 times I took kids to NCYC and we had to fundraise it because the parish couldn't just say, here's $5,000, take the kids, have fun. You know, we had to earn every dollar. We earned. So, that's part of the problem is we're putting so much money into all of us, not just us, every parish, is putting so much money into just maintaining structures that something, they need to do something to obviously, the end result is to bring more people to Jesus, right? So, but this is the Archdiocese is the first step. Anything else about 1B? Okay, so 2A is St. Pius goes to the Cicero Bruin group and restarts the process to discern over again. And then Mater Christi, St. Mary, and St. Hugh form one parish. All 3 of our buildings stay open. Questions, comments, strengths, challenges about that scenario? You guys are so much quieter than yesterday. Okay, so 2B is again St. Pius goes to Cicero and Berwin and rediscerns. St. Hugh and St. Mary and Mater Christi form one parish. St. Hugh Church buildings close. Questions, comments?
This is the only parish I've ever known. I made all my sacraments here. I was baptized here. My grandparents, my name is Kathy Drum. And my parents and grandparents were married here. This is my lifelong parish. I was married here. They've all been buried from here, and I assumed I would be too one day. Not that I'm ready for that. But any of the 2 options that have St. Hugh closing are really terrible. It really hit me hard. And especially now, I was concerned, why would they even continue with this with COVID? Because so many people, I have not felt comfortable coming to church. That's why I haven't been here. And I'm usually here regularly. And I can't see, and with the 800 people, of course, October, you're not going to have the count of people not comfortable coming with COVID, that I can't even believe why they're going ahead with this, why they didn't put this on hold.
Good point. Good point.
It's a good question, why not to put everything on. And I think also the question of the COVID is a good one because we need spacing now.
Right.
So that I think came out last night, so it didn't come from me. But yes, there are questions that are valid, and make sure to express yourself. We take notes, but your questions are very important, insightful, and I cannot answer all of them, and I cannot make them happen neither. Neither can anybody here with us, even though we would love to. But I think we are on the same page. Yes, I agree with most of you today, and I'm also for St. Hugh. But this situation that we all deal with, I think the Archdiocese is trying to figure out still. So I'm not sure how this is going to affect anything, but right now it looks like we are on the schedule with things. And by January, many parishes like ours will know what is their decision.
Right, even us as a team, normally the meetings would have been held in person, but we're only meeting online via Zoom. And then we did lose a lot of kind of meetings in the beginning, about half the stuff, and then they really kind of piled on a heavy schedule on us. We were meeting 3 times in October, so it's plus our meetings with you. So it's been a pretty heavy schedule to what was missed in the beginning, because the main thing is this December 14th date that the writing team, which Sue is our representative of the writing team, that's when her and Father will present, you know, all of the input from the, and along with the pastors and the writing team members from the other parishes. They present it to, like I said, I think it's the CEO, the, you know, Bishop, our vicarious Bishop Mans, or the new bishop, and the rest of this team that they've created. And then they, you know, kind of make a recommendation and with the Presbyteral Council, and then it goes up. But yeah, I mean, so there's this December 14th date, and I think, I mean, ultimately, I mean, Father and I, we see the collection week to week, and some weeks, because, I mean, people aren't able to come to church. Some weeks are not very good, and I think it's the same for all the parishes. So putting everything on hold, would we even be able, right? I mean,
we don't know if that will help us or hurt us.
right, because if we wait longer, what if we don't have the money to go on longer? I mean, that's the thing, it's a balance of, you know, it's a trade-off, what's best, what's not best, but ultimately we weren't changing the schedule. You know, we brought up COVID, we brought up, you know, we didn't have all the reports, because like I said, the reports weren't done all in there. So we made sure we had as much information as we possibly could before we proceeded with certain steps. But ultimately, I mean, the decision, you know, was to come out. I mean, and there were other parishes that weren't even supposed to be in this wave, that they were in more trouble because of COVID, that they got like emergency put into this wave and are being pushed a lot faster. They were supposed to be in the next wave. And so their decisions are actually going to come out probably before ours, because they were on an accelerated schedule. So thankfully, we're at least not in that much trouble to be on an accelerated schedule and being, and I don't, you know, but ultimately, guys, this is our time to really, like I said, gather as much of your thoughts, pick your brains. I mean, these are just 5 scenarios, and maybe something you say, some piece of information that's in your brain, presented to the people above us, will maybe spark something that's a new creative solution that none of us thought of. You know, ultimately, because the Cardinal has to come back with decisions that weren't the recommendations. He's like, no, I don't like this, and come up with a different one. Or taking a decision that came from the parishes, not from the archdiocese, because these scenarios came from the archdiocese. So, but sometimes in other cases, the parish scenario that they created was the better fit, and that's the one the Cardinal chose. So that's why it's so important that we get your feedback. Are we good with anybody else have anything to say about? Okay. Well, she walks around. I'm going to let Jackie. And then we have Kathy over here too.
Okay, this is a comment from Facebook from Veronica Elford, and she says, this is like a more general comment, I guess. It's not really like regarding the this situation in turn, I guess. But do any of the other churches in our group have all the facilities we do? Do they have more buildings than us? What do they have that we don't?
I mean, most people know what we did 2 other facilities. I mean, St. Mary obviously has a very large facility. They have the church. They have a new portion of a school, an old portion of a school. They have a really big gym and a really big parish center. And then they just did open up. They bought that P&C Bank on, what is it? I can't think of that, Riverside Avenue or whatever back there. Burlington, for their offices, because they were originally fundraising to build a new rectory or whatever, but this was a better situation. St. Pius is all one kind of building that's kind of piece, you know, like there's the school and the convent that are connected. They do have the rectory pastor residence, which is a house. It's not like right next door, it's like 2 doors, you know, it's like a house from them. Mater Christi is the church, and then the pastor residence rectory offices are right next door, and then across the street they have their school building, and then it's kind of split level. Is that how you would describe it with the convent? Is part like it's kind of above it, but not all above. Some of it's school upstairs, some of it's convent upstairs. So ultimately, we all have school buildings. We don't have a convent. St. Pius and Mother Christie have convents, so lots of living quarters, like small, old dorm-style living, kind of. And then St. Mary and Nestor are the only ones with gyms. So then we've got, just name please.
Lord Bukowski. How long are we going to have our board planning?
Can you just take the mask?
Fundraiser? What?
No, we can't. Can you take the mask so we can understand what I'm thinking?
It's Laura Bukowski. How long would we have to get money for a fundraiser? Or can we bring money to the parish and
It's not really a
keep
matter
our parish?
It's not really like a matter of fundraising and saving our parish.
No, thank you all for taking part in our fundraisers, because we've had a lot, and in the last couple of years I pushed for much more than she wanted to do sometimes. I'm kidding. No, she loves them too. But I think the question of our diocese is, outside of fundraisers and extra income, is the parish, basically able to move forward for like 10 years. We're not questioning today or tomorrow or year ahead only, which is kind of rough. Even before COVID, and I've been here 2 years in June, especially summer was difficult to make it because, we didn't have any people because of vacation and that. But even outside of summer, collection is lower than it should be, substantially. We don't have fancy positions here. We don't have many people who work for St. We don't have much of the, people power here. But we have buildings. And that's the concerns, I think, the buildings. And as I mentioned to Carol, we're hoping that they will allow us to sell some of the buildings, and that will make us more efficient, because we're not going to worry about those few buildings, because we'll have the revenue that will cover the future. So fundraisers, I love them, but they don't look at that. Okay? But there are solutions that we think of. It just, if they're going to look at them, I don't know.
We moved, changed from St. Pius to St. Hugh many years ago, and then we moved, and I looked at at Westchester. I looked at the amount that they got in collections and said, forget it, St. Hugh needs my money. Now look around, everybody here, you wouldn't be here if you didn't want St. Hugh to stay open. So I think that's something we should really consider and do whatever needs to be done. Thank you.
Oh, I was just going to add a couple of things. I don't know if you mentioned that the October count won't be this year because of COVID. It'll be from last year. And then the other thing was, there's a lot of data on the facilities, that we've been given on each of the facilities, the report that Chris mentioned. But we also went on tours of every single building, our team, every single building in all the other 3 parishes, and then we hosted tours of our facilities for each of those. So we try to show the beauty of our church and everything you can't find on a data sheet,
And what did you feel from that?
What do I feel? I think overall, our overall thing was, we really can't compare the church buildings, right? They're sacred spaces, they're special to each community, right? So beyond that, you really can't compare. It's special, right? So it's not really comparing. Obviously, St. Mary's has done a lot more recent work. So yes, they have a lot of nice new stuff. But I think our overall thing was, we were kind of thought, like our old school rooms were comparable to St. Pius's older school rooms and Mother Christie's older school rooms. I mean, I at least wanted to write read something where they were kind of all similar. There was nobody that's no, they're older school buildings. We thought they were all pretty. Obviously, St. Mary's older school buildings was a little bit above because it's functioning as a school right now. But we thought they were all pretty much kind of, more even. But again, this is us with just our eyes But I can be honest, when I walked into their buildings, I tried not to walk in looking at their buildings as what's better in mine than theirs. Because I felt like, in the end, there's going to be something we're going to have to accept, right? One of these scenarios or some new scenario or some combination. So my thought process of walking into these buildings was trying to take things we did here and imagine them in their spaces. Because maybe they have a space that works way better for something we do, that we make it fit, you force that piece in the puzzle, and maybe we walk in their space and it's like, oh wow, what we do this might work here, or maybe their event and our event could work together great in our space. That's kind of how I went around. And when I looked at their buildings is what do we do, what can we do in these spaces, what are the possibilities? I don't know if anybody else wants to share what you felt when you went to the buildings.
I think it's very deceitful if you try to look and say, oh, this building is great and the other one isn't. The buildings were being judged by professionals, and they were not looking at the looks, at the most part they were looking at the state of the buildings and mechanical parts and some things like AC, like boilers, etc., heating installations, whatever. And ours would need a lot of money for the boiler system, because we have a new boiler, but the system is not what it should be. I thought actually that we could add a furnace for the whole church school building. It would be cheaper to add something not to fix. But again, there has to be a decision that will come from high above to even allow us to think about anything like this. But there can be solutions. It's not impossible. And when you talk about church buildings, you can talk from the perspective of what you see, and you can talk from the perspective of what is going to be needed in like 10 years. So that's why the number on our assessments is so high, because everything works seemingly, but it's aged. And I guess those professionals bring the number that tells you have to remove things or replace things or fix them. Otherwise, soon you will have to spend a lot of money to make everything going. And I don't agree with that, but that's how they are doing their assessments. They don't tell you basically the reality today, but they more tell you the future. That this property requires a lot of investment, that property, then you wait a couple years, it's okay. It's also the number of the buildings we have, it's the size of them, it's the character of them, and how we use them. So everything matters, and happens that our number double all the small parishes numbers. So that's why it's so concerning. And again, it's a number that's not a bill. It's not a bill. It's a number done to look at and to assess if you want to meet it in the future or if you want to change the situation so you don't have to pay. And I'm more for finding a solution to minimize the number as much as we can so we can afford. But again, it's not up to me to make the decision.
I think this question from Facebook might have been kind of answered to that, but I'm still just going to ask it. So Georgina Lee says, is there a list of things wrong with our buildings, and is there any possibility that we could fix them ourselves?
We have the assessment, but as just a business side of it, any repair over a certain dollar amount, and I think the magic number is $10,000, we need to get our diocesan approval before we can do it. So, like when we replaced the boiler, was that 4 years ago? Had to get approval. When, I have to just have the furnace guy come out and clean the furnaces or whatever. No big deal, right? That's under $10,000. But anything over a certain dollar amount, the archdiocese has to approve as a capital expense to fix. So some of the things on the list, sure, are small little fixes. Like I think one of the things is like the garage door on Mother's garage. That's definitely under $10,000. taking all the radiators out of this building and replacing them, way more than $10,000. So some things, yes, could be done more, immediately if, if they're under the $10,000 threshold without them having to go through the channels to get approval. But, I mean, when something's of a certain dollar amount, not only do we have to get our process and approval, they put out bids, and then they manage it. Like when the roof got repaired on the gym, all I had to do was be here to give keys. They handled, all of the oversight of it, because it's a much bigger project than, they have a building and facilities people that manage that, and so it goes out to bid, and so, I mean, so yes, some things we sure we could raise money and fix, but a lot of the things like, for example, all of the radiators in this building, that was one of the things on the list. That's
But
big.
I think rather still, we should look for a reduction of the buildings. That will be the cheapest and the best and the revenue, then looking at more fixing right away. We don't need to fix anything right now. Really. But
Right, everything, there was nothing when our report came back like that was imminent, like that was life safety. There was nothing that came back that was, this must be fixed, in the next, even year. Everything we got was at least 2 years out. Any other questions on 2B so that we can move to 3? You're good over there? Yeah. So scenario 3 is Mater Christi and St. Mary unite to form one parish, and then St. Hugh and St. Pius X unite to form one parish. Just as a side on that one, if you were to go onto the website and read the more detail, because it has a little bit more detail than just 1 and 1 equal, 1 and 1 equal 1. It has that on the very bottom that they were thinking as a cost savings to have one operational and one facilities management to manage both new parishes. So I don't know if many people know, so I'm the business manager, but in many parishes now, especially where they have done combinations, they're having what are called operation directors. No, directors of operation. And they're kind of more overseeing at the higher level, and then they might have a business manager or a bookkeeper at the more, closer level that handles the day-to-day stuff, because obviously this director of operations isn't going to write all the checks, for the pastor to sign. So you need there's somebody at the higher level. So I'm thinking that person on the top, and then also one person or two, however they manage the facilities, or you can have a team that works both sets of parishes, So that's what they're thinking as a cost savings to share that, but that did come up that was even not necessarily ideal as well. Okay, so as far as that, does anybody have any comments, questions, strengths, challenges in regards to scenario 3?
I've been here about 10 years now. It's hard to believe. But I have found that the attendance is down. The major thing we need is people that are just wondering and dying to get in here. We've got some fantastic people. Faith is full of miracles, and we are full of miracles, and we need to be able to share this, whether it's having food every week as one option on Sunday, or at least one, or Bible study, or any kind of thing at all. We need to be able to get together frequently, either during the week or on the weekend, and grow. Because that, to me, that's the biggest change. That there's fewer people. There's 11 at 8 o'clock mass, or 9 at 10, and there's maybe 30 at this mass. It's just. But that's not just the parish. That's the pandemic, of course. So I don't know. I want to continue to be able to come here and play and sing and put it all together, but it's not happening. And especially with this pandemic, it's crazy that they both have come together. So we got to find a way. Did you have a clue? I really don't know what to say.
Mr. Sherman wants to say something. Mr. Sherman.
I'm not sure that, and I sort of feel that the whole like we're trying to be more like the other churches, like the Protestant and the evangelical and all that. And I think that's where we're losing. We're losing our people. And we have to be the way we were, the conservative and the same church yesterday, today, and tomorrow.
I just wanted to ask a question. I wanted to ask a question about demographics. Has this been considered as a quantitative measure? I'd like to know, like, the demographics of our area compared to the other churches, because that would show where we do have the potential to grow and to increase our money coming in the future to offset those costs in the future.
Sure. I'm not sure if you've been looking at our church before COVID, 2 years. We have just an education program, and I've been trying together with Mrs. Alford to not only give good education to the back, but also bring kids and their parents here for 10:30. And for 2 years before COVID, we worked somewhat. We were in the process of kind of growing new parishioners by having first their kids here attending, and people were registering, and that was a slow process before COVID, and something was starting then, but that requires more time, and COVID has broken that process, because we don't have a good set. So people don't come here with kids, they don't as much, maybe some come, but just a few. And I think in the future, if we are given a second chance, it would be good to revise it again and look how better we can do that and maybe other things. Because Religious Ed is embracing everybody, every young family who have kids and who come here for, especially summer, but also just Catholic education. So I've seen growth for 10:30, and I mentioned a couple times, this last 10:30 many times was over 200 people packed. There were some weekends when they were standing in the back, because it was that packed. Again, part of it was religious education. We worked with the volunteers who were there, and with Chris, and we were talking to the parents, so they were staying with the kids. And the registration is the first thing. I mean, the registration as a parishioner, but it's a long process to bring people and kind of convince them to stay and become parishioner, because they would come from all over the area. But it was looking good. It was getting there. The COVID has erased that motion, and now what we get. Today wasn't bad for 10:30, but there were some Sundays where you hardly see people for 10:30 because this mass gets some long-time parishioners, but many people who maybe not even are registered and come here. So I'm looking forward, the second chance, I'm looking forward the time after COVID when we can have normal religious education. And then if you're going to help us, I'll be grateful, to grow that momentum, because I thought it was beautiful. And we had crowds, and they were coming for good reason. And there are other things that we can do, but I think 10:30 has the biggest potential for the younger families. 4 o'clock can grow too, but 4 o'clock has a different dynamics than 10:30. And 4 o'clock was great too before COVID. We had a crowd we had over 100 people coming. So both masses were pretty much growing. And so what's kind of the end? Again, COVID in many parishes has destroyed the attendance. Yes, people support us in different ways, but physical attendance is most important for Catholics. Now we live in times when a lot of things are permitted, if people are afraid to come in person, you cannot tell them to come, right? But I'm waiting simply for better times as a pastor.
Just to kind of respond also to the demographics of the 5 scenarios, the third one, or scenarios B, or scenario 3, I guess, in terms of demographics, I think we are closest to St. Pius. So that was one of the strengths that we listed for that scenario, that there is a stronger connection demographically as well as
socioeconomic.
Yeah, thank you. I can think of the word. So there's a better connection. So that was definitely one of the strengths of that third one. But regardless of what scenario is decided, that is something that we have to address, is that difference in demographics as well as socioeconomic.
In the data sheet, if I'm remembering correctly, I just was reading it this morning, it says that now this is all 4 communities, not just any 2, all 4 communities, 30% Hispanic. I believe Tina was on Facebook last night. She had the school statistics. I want to say it was 60 to 70% or something Hispanic for St. Hugh, St. Pius area. And we did raise that in the meetings that, even going back, Tina said she can remember when Father Tom was leaving and Father Bob Burnell was coming. They said then that this was an area, that this area was growing, in the Hispanic community, that it needed to be, looked at. And I know St. Pius is struggling with the same, it's growing, the area is changing, and how are we addressing that, and how, moving forward. And so we raised the issue, it came up last night, but it is, they're saying 30% overall for all 4 communities. I think it was maybe it's 33, I don't remember exactly, but it's, so roughly a third for all 4 is Hispanic, but it's 70% is what Tina pulled off the school. Now she works with the district, she pulled the numbers from the school district report card, that it's 70% Hispanic. Because we share the same school district with Stickney, that she was able to pull the numbers and their shared numbers. Did you want one there and then I'll go over here?
Good morning, good afternoon, my name is Clifford Berger. I agree with scenario 3, combining 2 parishes, Monte Cristi, the St. Mary combined, St. Pius X and St. Hugh's were combined. And just to piggyback on what Father Robert said, I do agree that it's important to have religious education, but also in terms of demographics, you got to think about the fact that this community is changing. We're getting senior citizens, but we're also getting an influx of Latinos, Filipinos, people of Asian and Pacific Islander descent. I think what you need to do is really consider bringing back the 1:30 Mass and trying to beat that bilingual Mass, just to incorporate the fact that the neighbor is diverse as opposed to being classic. And I do want to keep this church open because by the grace of God, my wife and I have been Christians here since 2011. So I want to continue to come to this church because first of all, it's convenient to walk here, and more important than that, it's accessible to the metro station. So it's perfect for me in terms of getting where I need to go. But like I said, if we have to sell buildings, particularly the gymnasium and Keaton Hall, to keep this church open, then we got to do whatever it takes to keep this church open. Meaning we sell buildings, do fundraisers, but most importantly, bringing in bilingual Mass. And another notation that my wife and I were discussing last night was music. We got to get the choir involved.
We can't have a choir right now.
Okay, well.
Can't have a choir.
I said, sorry about that.
Nice try.
Just for future, but like I said, perhaps consider a bilingual Mass, particularly a Spanish-speaking Mass, particularly around 1:30 would be ideal, or even a Polish Mass if need be. But the fact is, a bilingual Mass is important because we have to think about the diversity of this neighborhood and this village. And if we do that, everything else will work well. But the thing is, we have to sell the buildings, the gymnasium, and the heating, all the offset the costs. Thank you so much.
Can you bring the mic to Father after Carol?
Carol Holberg again. I think of the scenarios, this third one is, I think, a stronger possibility. From my opinion, we are sharing the school district with Stickney. There's feeding, to your point, of youth and young people who know each other coming into the church, families getting to know each other. There is that synergy that could potentially work in that scenario. I do think that St. Hugh has proven over the past 10 years that we have had an influx of young people and families in this community, in this church. Chris has done a beautiful job with religious ed, continuing to grow our young people. You see in our church young people involved in the Mass, outside, that is growth, that is the future. We have been told by other, Father Chris from the Camboni, how much he enjoys coming to St. Hugh to be part of that energy and the young people participating in the Masses. So for me, scenario 3 is a plus because you have the dynamic of the school district, of Latino families coming together, as well as the diverse community in general, and building on that forward-thinking energy of the church. And yes, it is a place where you can go beyond the numbers to see that we have something special here in our community. I agree that a Latino or bilingual Mass could be an interesting thing in the future, especially if we were in this scenario. I also think that St. Pius's pastor is aged and ready to retire, hopefully.
He's gone.
Oh,
He has not a new Father Tom May is their pastor, or their administrator, and then they have a priest who lives there in residence, and they're calling him the Sacramento.
He's a Sacramento priest out of Ricardo.
So again, a reason why this could work in a nice way, because there was already one pastor amongst the two. I just think that's a lot of pluses in that scenario for us.
Answering to both of you, especially Cliff, I think last night I kind of touched on it a little bit. Yes, when we got really merged with St. Pius, thank you, there will be talks how we're going to do different things. And bilingual or Spanish Mass or any other Mass, you need to have a priest who speaks Spanish, for example. I don't. Right now I think Father Ricardo will, so we would work with that. And you need to remember that once you establish a Mass, it is there. And you just have to think about what happens when the priest eventually moves. We don't have that many ethnic, what we call priests. There are not so many Polish priests or priests who speak Polish anymore. Not so many who speak Spanish or other different languages. But this is, I think, doable with St. Pius to think about the future. And yes, there are many Hispanics in the area. And the good thing is that many speak English too. So when they come to us and share with us, Eucharist and what we have to share with, and there's a need to create more. But again, that will happen when we be able to merge and dialogue in that situation. Otherwise, if we are pushing a different scenario, I don't know, there will be different decision made by somebody else. So, but I think it's possible if we are with the St. Mary's, Mater Christi, St. Hugh, St. Pius scenarios, then somewhere we can find some kind of agreement.
Any other comments, questions?
I want to make a comment, not necessarily on the renewed stuff, but we're very lucky, all of us here, because especially during COVID, I've been very happy to be able to find a church where you feel safe coming. I feel very safe coming here to this church, and to be honest with you, I'm not registered in this parish. I belong to one of the other churches on the list, and I'm not happy with the other churches. But Father needs to be commended for keeping this church open, for having almost back to regular as far as Mass schedule and that. Chris needs to be commended with the work she does with her staff. And the volunteers need to be commended. The young people who read, the people who are here every Sunday volunteering their time for us. Wiping our hands, signing in. And like I said, the young people who are involved in reading and doing things. I, for one, if I have to go to the Cardinal's house and tell him to keep St. Hugh's open, I'll do it. But we need to keep this church open. And I want to commend all these people that have made this opportunity for us even today to be here. And we know in the future, as long as we're not closed up again, because you all know the numbers are going up again very rapidly. So I'm hoping, I pray every day that we don't hear from Pritzker saying, church is closed on the inside. You know, the big step backwards that's going to be for us, that'll be a big step backward. But thank you, Father. Thank you, Chris. Thank you to everybody who volunteers their time.
Chris, can we do a write-in letter campaign to
So
the addresses?
You are welcome to send letters to the Cardinal, to the office. If you have questions about where and what, we can discuss that afterwards. But that is definitely, there is. But the main thing that works right now is if you give us the information as well. You're welcome to send a letter, but please give it to us. I mean, Sue and Olivia are up here taking vigorous notes, and probably will go back on Facebook and rewatch to make sure that we got all of the information, because ultimately everything being said here, our job, our role is to go back to our meetings on the 28th and say, you know, we're going to work to summarize it so that way we know, but to say this is what our people said, this is what their feedback is, how they feel, what they think is good about each scenario, what they think is bad about each scenario, what the strength and challenge is. You know, that's our role, is to take it back. So please give it to us so that we can voice it in the meeting. But yes, if you want to send letters, just call me at the office and I'll tell you where to go. I'll look it up, find out.
Sorry, but really quickly, I think it's very interesting that there's many of us who come from other places to St. Hugh, and I think that speaks to the draw and the community and the spiritual community. I mean, raise your hand if you do not live in Lyons. You know, there's quite a few of us that are active here, and this is a draw to this church that you can't replace. That is, we attract people from other communities here too. That says something.
Can you express yourself what is drawing you again? If you could kind of clarify more.
I mean, I am from Berwyn, which has a very strong parish, St. Leonard's, but I grew up, my family has roots in St. Hugh, but I chose to come to St. Hugh because I felt the community here welcomed me and was a strong, small community with faith-filled, caring people that I didn't feel lost. Like at St. Leonard's, I kind of felt lost in the shuffle. Here I felt part of the community and a very strong sense of love here. And that's what drew me. I mean, aside from family. Yeah.
Anybody else? We have a few more slides on the PowerPoint to finish.
Just to bring out too, St. Leonard does have a Spanish Mass at 1:30 every Sunday and at 7 p.m. A Spanish Mass every Sunday. So, yes, they're both very crowded. But the one web thing is, I don't know now because I haven't been there for a while, but when they used to pass the basket, they didn't make a lot of extra money at those two Masses. I noticed them being passed back with no money with the basket. So I don't know how much, it was worth the, yeah.
Anything else before we finish the presentation? Okay. Again, please share your comments, anything extra you think about later. Like I said, there is an online form to do it. You can mail it, you can email it, you can call, push 1, and they come right to my cell phone. So even though I'm not at my desk, I get the calls, push 2, you'll get Father. And we'll take it, drop it in the collection. If you want to write something up, put it in the collection. We we will include it. We're going to funnel it all to, our team so we can all have the information. Okay, just to finish the slideshow. Right, we meet on the 28th, so please try to get us everything by at least 26th, 27th, so we have a chance to share it amongst ourselves. So our groupings realities, that the information in the reports the status reveals trends about significant population and ethnic demographic changes in our grouping, our parish's mass attendance and sacramental records, our church and school operating income and expenses, and school religious ed and education enrollments, and the building conditions. So just think about when you're writing up, if you write anything up, which scenario best addresses the particular needs of this grouping and why, and which scenario least addresses the particular needs of this grouping and why. And then what do you consider the biggest potential challenge facing the implementation of these scenarios? And one of the things we did raise was that, especially in any scenario, COVID is going to make a combination of anyway very difficult. But if it includes a closure, that makes it even more difficult because we are very limited. There is a whole process of how they close, but it again poses extra challenges in how we do it because we are more restricted in what we're able to do. So we did, raise that concern as well. Our next steps are grouping and feedback discernment teams will again get all your feedback and share it on the 28th. We've been doing a lot of praying, a lot of tears have been shed, a lot of shaking our heads and not knowing what to say or do. And then we're going to continue with the rest of the parish teams to make sure that we have really good information for the writing team to write up. We want to make their job hard ultimately. Sorry, Sue. We want to make their job really, really hard so they have so much information because ultimately for anybody to make a good decision, the more information you have, the better decision you can make. So that's why it's so important that I know not everybody is wanting to necessarily speak out loud, or you might not even think about it right now. You think about it, I know me, I'm laying in bed at night and I wake up in the middle of the night and something just pops in your head. Write it down, text some your friend, even if I want to remember something, I'll text my kid and say, don't wake up, I'm just texting so that way it's there, out there in the world, so I can remember to write it down later. Make sure to put it to paper, get it to us, because ultimately, more information that we have, the better armed the partner is to make a very good decision. Because ultimately, the President of the Council makes a recommendation, but he's the one who signs off on it final, and he doesn't have to like it. He doesn't have to like what's presented to him. He can look at it and look at some of the data and say, no, I don't think this is right. Look what this and this and this is. You need to rethink this, or you know what, maybe we'll give up a better solution. I don't know, but again, it's all we need is all of the information. And we don't hold it all. No one of us holds it all. But collectively, imagine, that's the best way we can do it. And that's the end. I'm going to ask fathers to, nobody else has any other questions or comments? Fathers going to end in prayer, and then we just ask everyone to sit for a minute after prayer, and then we will go.
Thank you for coming here, and I also thank all the groups who've been supporting us, probably especially St. Pius people who've been very nice, supportive, and praying for us, and we'll see how things will go. And Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Today, uniting together, asking the Lord for all we need to pass from this moment into the new life, from this moment of discernment and security into resolutions, happiness, love that we all need, new times that will help us to be not only together, as people, but together as a community of God, who that's in you, who is our patron, and we pray together. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. The Lord be with you. The precious protect and keep you safe, and bring you back soon, the Father and the Son and the